Hi, I'm Michelai Graham, the Technically DC Market Editor. Technically is a news site that grows local technology communities by connecting organizations and people through news, events, and services. This is Technically DC Diaries, a pilot interview series where I will talk to local technologists and startup leaders about themselves and why they do the great and hard work that they do. For this edition, I have with me Alex Stonehouse, Director of Marketing at Procurated. Thanks for joining, Alex. How are you today?
Hey, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me today.
Good, good. I really appreciate you joining. All right, let's hop
Of
into it.
course.
So first, can you tell me how you first got into working in tech slash entrepreneurship, or how you even went to work at a startup, really?
Yeah, so I came to DC about a decade ago, and I got my first job in DC working at the Washington Post, actually, in their marketing and branding department. So I was there. I think my last month was actually the month that Jeff Bezos bought the paper. So I was out when that switch happened.
Mhm.
And from there, I went to another company called Social Code that's run by Laura O'Shaughnessy, which at the time was still owned by the Washington Post company, and it may still be. But they really were the first type of startup company that I worked for. So it was under, I think, probably 70 or 80 people when I joined. We grew, probably doubled in that first year. And that really gave me the bug for working in tech and working in that sort of startup, fast-paced environment. And then from there, I worked at a couple other places in publishing, a company called Xometry out in Bethesda, which was a on-demand manufacturing company, which I'm sure has been all over technically over the last several
Yeah.
years. And what it really taught me in those roles is that there's things you can learn from specializing, and there's things that you can learn from being kind of like the one-man generalist on your team. So I've had the benefit of kind of doing both, doing B2B marketing, B2C marketing, B2G marketing. And the role I'm in now is great. I think we just started 13 people now at Procurated. So I have the ability to tap into all those things that I've learned in the past and build them together into one big program. So it's really fulfilling.
Awesome. So tell me, what does the day in the life of a director of marketing actually look like? What do you do day to day?
So until about 4 months ago, I was running our entire marketing team on my own as a smaller startup. But
Yeah.
luckily, I was able to hire Bernadette Lowney, who's my marketing associate.
Hmm.
So that has freed up my day to day a little bit. But it's a combination of, I always talk about it as like, it's like marketing is a combination of art and science, right? So you're taking the data and the analytics of all the campaigns that you're running across Google, LinkedIn, email campaigns, everything that you're doing. And then you're comparing it to sort of, or mashing it with kind of the art of marketing, which is, all right, did we get our wording perfectly on that? Is what we're saying matching what people are thinking? Does what we're saying convey any emotion, or does it make people feel a certain way?
Yeah.
And you can kind of see that in the data, but it's really mashing those two things together. So a lot of it is figuring out where our customers are, where are they engaging with each other already? How do we bring them into the platform to engage on our platform? And it's really just trying to do it in a way where we're not only inviting them into the platform, but we're actually giving them something back, right? So we're saying, hey, come check out Procurated, and we have content, and we have our ratings and review tool, and we have all these different things that we're not asking you to come in just because we want to pull from you. We want to ask you to come in so that we can give you something bigger back. So like, we want to actually help you and improve your life and make your life better
Yeah.
and create efficiency and all that for you. So I think marketing can get sort of a bad rap when you think about like clickbait and all these different
Yeah.
things that get associated with it. But really at the end of the day, like, we're trying to tell the Procurated story so that we can actually help people have an easier time at their jobs.
Absolutely. I like that. So tell me, what's great about the DC tech community and what can it do better?
That's a good question. So I think one of the great aspects of it is that it's not too big. So I think you can actually make really significant relationships.
Yeah.
And because of just the nature of DC, where a lot of people maybe have like a spouse who works in government, or they have some type of tie to the district,
Yeah.
there's actually some longevity for people here. So if you meet somebody in there, you really hit it off and you trade ideas and all that. It's really easy to have that relationship for 5 years, 10 years, because like they're probably still going to be here too. And I would say one of the things I think that the community in general could do better, and technically DC does a great job of it, is actually propping up sort of the ego of this market to what I think it should be. So I think there's some really talented companies and people doing some awesome things in the GovTech space that I don't think get enough credit because they're not consumer products. So it's not something like an Uber or something where every citizen across the United States has access to it and they know about it. But I don't think that should diminish the effectiveness or how cool the technology is, just because it might be made for the federal government or made for some other type of entity that isn't just mass consumption. So I think we're, not to use the word cooler, but we're cooler than people think we are.
I agree. Yeah, I often try to tell people, people ask me where I get my stories from
Yeah.
and where tips come from. I'm like, my email's drowning. Like, there's so much
Yeah.
happening in the community. Sometimes it's hard to keep up, but that's a good problem to have. That's better than me, having to scratch and dig for news.
Oh
Like,
yeah,
there's an influx of it, of course.
for sure.
All right. So, how are you working to keep the community connected? In other words, what are you doing to stay connected with different people since COVID has hit? We were just talking about how we're on month 7 now of working from home, which I didn't even realize it had been that long because it's just kind of become first nature now.
Yeah, that's a good question. And so what we've tried to do is focus kind of two-pronged. First on our internal communication, so making sure everybody on our team is connected. And that's really an interesting process because we've onboarded, I think probably half our team at this point has been onboarded during this COVID era since March started. So like my direct report, she started in June, and we worked together for 6 weeks before we ever even actually met in person.
Yeah.
And so we've been lucky enough that most of our team is still here in DC. So we've been able to say, all right, let's meet down at the mall and go for a walk, or let's go to Meridian Hill Park and we'll sit 6 feet apart and have a coffee and chit chat about something for an hour. So we actually kind of get to know each other. But I think that's been pretty smooth so far. The one thing you do lose if you're not careful is that connection with people who you're not forced to work with every day. So somebody, even on your own team, who may be like, you're at the same company, obviously, but you don't ever work on the same projects.
Yeah.
And then out in the community, people who, are just at different companies or different places. And I think one thing we're really lucky in having is through our CEO, David Yarkin, and Becca Moran, who's our Senior Director of Product Management. People like that have been in DC for so long that they have amazing connections. So if I am ever like, hey, I wonder how I can make our LinkedIn campaigns more efficient. Like, there's people I can go reach out to who can help me with that, who are in this DC market. And that's how we've really been approaching it, is like leveraging our own networks. People who, like, they might not know me, but they know David, so I'm going to talk to them through him. Or they might not know me, they know Becca, I'll talk to them through her.
Yeah.
That's been huge for the last 6 months or so.
Yeah, awesome. That's important. So how has your work-life balance been since working from home? You look like you got a nice office set up over there.
Yeah, it's much improved since about 6 months ago. And that's a great question. And I think it's a little more low-key now than it probably was 4 months ago when daycares and all that were still closed. Because I have a 3-year-old daughter who is quite fun and energetic.
Great coworker.
Yes, she's amazing. And I was doing calls in April, May, June with her sitting on my lap, so it was two heads in one screen.
Yeah.
And I think it was funny because early on people would talk about work, like, how's work from home? And I'm like, this isn't that. Like, work from home is when you're by yourself in your office and you're just doing your job but at your house. This is like some weird conglomerate of working, living, parenting, all just mashed together. But that being said, I think it's been pretty good. Like, there's some hidden perks of like no commute and no like I'm saving hundreds of dollars a month on not having to park, and there's little perks to it. And I think the one thing that everybody was worried about was obviously productivity. Like, are people going to slack off from home, which just really hasn't been true as far as I can tell.
Yeah.
But the other thing is are we going to lose some type of connection? Like, are we going to not be as close? Are we not going to be as attached to our colleagues? And I found the opposite, where it's almost like conversations you might miss out on in person because there's 20 people in an office. Now you're having a one-on-one Zoom with somebody and you can actually just be like honest. You're not worried about somebody overhearing. There's no, like, you can have conversations that still happened when you're in person, but I think probably weren't as often as you can have them now.
Yeah, for sure. I really feel like quarantine has brought a more personable feel to like working.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's hard to not ask somebody right now how they're feeling or what they're going through.
Yeah.
You're going to see it across their face. We're on Zoom with each other every other day.
Sure.
If you don't ask, you're definitely going to see it. So I definitely agree with that.
Yeah.
So what does recharging on the weekends look like for you? What do you do for fun?
That's another good question. So a lot of it, as I mentioned, my daughter is going to the park, going to jungle gyms, going for hikes in Rock Creek or some of the surrounding
Yeah.
areas like that. But in terms of, I'd say hobbies or things that I like to do to recharge, my probably number one thing is lifting or weightlifting. As you can see that I'm filling up
Yeah.
most of the screen here.
Yeah.
Um,
I've been working out, but I still
yeah,
got some
yeah.
screen to fill.
And for me, it just gives a nice, it's sort of a nice marker of time. I'll occasionally do like bench press competitions or things like that. And it's
Oh,
like,
really?
it gives you a goal where you're like, all right,
Mhm.
I have a thing in March. So I can't just like be a lump on the log on my couch for the next 6 months. I have a goal I'm trying to hit.
Yeah.
That's a little ways out. And that's one of those things too, where it's just 2 hours in the gym. You don't have to worry about anything. You got your headphones in. And it's kind of a reset that gives me that energy for the rest of the week.
For sure.
Yeah.
How has so you have been going to the gym lifting. How is
Only once a week because I'm still
only once a week?
nervous. I'm
Okay,
still
I was
nervous
just about
about
to ask.
COVID.
I know.
I'm still
I
nervous,
haven't
so I'm
returned.
very safe. I go at nighttime when there's nobody there.
Oh, nice, nice, nice. I was gonna say I actually used to go to 1776, the DC location. We had access to a basement gym, which was really
Oh
nice.
yeah,
Had a bunch of different equipment, but it was generally shared with the entire building. So I haven't been back because I'm like
yeah. You
definitely.
got you got to time it right. You don't want to be going at the peak at 6:30 p.m. when everybody else is there.
Nope. And it's like people might be there during the day. So I'm like, maybe I can go around lunchtime. But I'm like, I feel like a lot
Hmm.
of people would be in there because they're also thinking no one's going to be in here at lunchtime. So I'll
Yeah,
figure it out. So where do you hope to be in 5 years? Do you still see yourself working in marketing?
I do, and I think that's one of the. I joined Procurated a little over a year ago at this point, and as part of the process of joining the team, that's obviously something you get asked about in interviews and things like that,
Mhm.
and that's really how I sort of envisioned the growth of the company and the growth of the team is still being there at that point, but really having built out the structure and the people that kind of fill the umbrella of the team to a place where we can sort of spread a little bit from being kind of generalists, where like how I am now, where I'm sort of working on everything, to having people join the team who are a little bit more specialists in certain areas. So I think one of the things that I'm always trying to work on is um, like what fascinates me about marketing is like it's telling stories, right? So you're telling the story of your company in a way that resonates with the people who you're trying to reach. And in if your product is a altruistic product that's actually helping people, then like there's not really the shady nature of marketing to it.
Mhm.
And so my goal really is to just continue to get better at that, right? So it's continue to improve that ability to tell a compelling story to the people who need to hear it, but then also to allowing people to come into the team who they can take their expertise and kind of run with it. So when it comes to hiring, I just mentioned like I hired our first marketing team person earlier this year. And there's a lot of people who they hire people and then they micromanage them and they are just in every aspect of their life. And my kind of attitude of it is I want to hire people who are either already experts in something or are extremely driven to become that type of expert, and then sort of let them run with it. And I was just using the analogy of I don't know if you've heard the phrase "let Russ cook" for the Seattle Seahawks this year, of Russell Wilson, of people being like, "Hey, just unleash the reins. He's
Yeah,
amazing. Just let him be Russell. Just let him go out there and fling it and be awesome." And that's sort of how I like to think of hiring people on a marketing team. It's like, all right, you've proven over the last 8 years of your career that you're amazing in email acquisition or you're amazing in social media. And now, like, you're on our team. We have a plan. We have some general guidelines we're going to stick to. We're always going to check back on the analytics to make sure we're not blowing through our budget. But let's just, hey, I hired you to be awesome. I hired you to do this job. Let's let you cook and let you go with it. So
yeah,
I think I still see myself here in that time period, but with a team of people just doing some awesome things.
for sure, for sure. So what motivates you every day?
You got some good questions today.
I'm
Um,
trying. I'm trying.
yeah, I makes me, and it gets back to a little bit to your sort of work-life balance question of has the quarantine been going. I really like to think of sort of priorities or balance and all those things, and sort of like picking your top. I like to pick my top four. So pick your top four things in your life that you care about. I know some people say three, some people say six, whatever number you want to land on.
Yeah.
But my example is sort of, you can choose family, your work, your faith, your hobbies, whatever you want to do. There's people who they're a dentist, and so they want to be the best dentist they can be. They're also a marathon runner, and they're a grandparent. So those are the three things where they're like, I'm going to be a good grandparent, good runner, good dentist. And I try to take the same approach where when I wake up, it's like, all right, today I'm going to be the best father I can be, the best colleague and boss that I can be. I'm going to try to do my best to hit those hobby lifting goals that I can do. And then the fourth thing is really just, I mentioned it in the context of marketing, but I just really do love that storytelling aspect of things. So try to apply that to work, to marketing to people, but also just in general. So like, if you're telling somebody a story and you can make them laugh, whether it's a colleague or a friend or any of that, everything around storytelling, I think it's super interesting and also just fulfilling to kind of dive into that world.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Good for you. All right. If you could describe yourself in 3 words, what would those 3 words be?
That's a good one. I would say I try to think of what people would describe me as.
Yeah.
I would say one is probably just chill. Like my personality, my whole life really has just been chill. So I think one of my best qualities is I'm driven, but I'm also like very calm under pressure. Nothing is really to kind of phase me on that front. I think another one would be thoughtful. So I try not to jump to like conclusions too fast. Try to consider multiple sides of the coin when we're looking at different things. I try to put myself in other people's shoes and really understand what they might be going through, why they think the way that they think. And that even flows over into the hiring stuff we've talked about, where it's like, I don't want to hire people who think the same way I do. I want people who have had a different life experience, who bring a different aspect to it. Yeah. Because I want a team of 6 people who all have 6 different opinions, instead of, all right, let's just hire 5 people who think exactly like I do. Yeah. And then the last one, which is not really a classic attribute that you would probably describe someone with, but I would say that I'm thankful. And especially like with everything that's going on in the last 6 months, I think anybody who's got like some security and people who love them and all that stuff, like kind of no matter what your overall situation is, just to be like connected to people and to have some stability I'm very thankful for that. Probably more so than I would have been a couple of years ago. But that's something that is, I think, partially just I do that anyways, but I've made a special effort to try to do that, and then try to share with people, hey, I think you're doing an amazing job, or hey, you really helped me out with this, or communicate that back to the people who have helped me. So I think that's 3.
Yes. Right. Thank you. I love that. All right. Any last words? This can be your time to share any upcoming announcements from Procurated, or any announcements about yourself, if you guys are hiring, anything like that.
Yeah, we're not hiring on the marketing team, but we do have some amazing jobs open at Procurated, including on our account management team, on our software and engineering team. We have a data analyst position open. So if you go to www.procurated.com and check out the careers section at the bottom, you can find those there. And then other than that, Procurated is just a really exciting place to be right now. We're expanding the number of states that we're in with our kind of strategic partnerships with different states. And then we're also have jumped from our original Pennsylvania beta product to a national product now. So we're across the entire United States and seeing some pretty cool growth numbers every month. So exciting place to be for sure.
Cool. Thank you for sharing. And I'll try to link those open positions when I write.
Awesome.
Awesome. All right. This has been Technically DC Diaries. I'm Michelai Graham. Thanks for watching and listening.